Hello. Well, welcome to episode 11 of Plebcast, a very special female-only episode. Ooh. I'm Kath. I'm replacing Jimmy because I'm better. And with me is Scarlett.
Hello, everybody.
And we've also got Rose, Ellen, and Connie.
Hello.
Introduce yourselves, gals.
I'm Rose. I'm third year Ancient History.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm second year Classics.
I'm Connie, and I'm third year Classical Studies.
Lovely. And we're here to talk about women in Antiquity because, let's be real, they're the best. We're going to jump right in and be like, girls, who are your favourite women?
My personal favourite is Turia, who is a woman from the late Republic. We only know about her because of her eulogy, which is inscribed into a tablet that is thought to be read out by her husband at her funeral. And what's really interesting is it's actually the longest piece of personal inscribed evidence that we have. And what makes her so interesting is, so her husband, in the eulogy, her husband explains all of her attributes, why she was a really good wife.
Classic.
But it starts...
All the important things.
Yeah,
the most important thing in life.
Good woman, good wife.
Could she weave?
She could weave, and that is one of the things that he says that is really great about her. But what's really...
There's nothing else to women, so I mean...
Yeah, but what's actually interesting is that, so her husband was exiled once Caesar comes into power because he was a supporter of Pompey. So whilst he's in exile, she is supplying him with gold, jewels, everything that means he can survive. She's the one that gains his forgiveness from Augustus so he can return to Rome. But whilst he's away, she fights off robbers from her home. She secures revenge for her parents' deaths. And she does all these different things that really are unusual for a Roman woman because normally,
doesn't need a husband anymore.
Because normally Roman women of that high class status are meant to have a very private life. And other than religious festivals, they're not really meant to be seen in the...
Women are not meant to be seen.
Yeah, they're not meant to be seen. So she lives a very public life. And does it successfully. So she's in the law courts, she's fighting off robbers. But what makes that interesting is once that civil strife dies down and her husband returns, she goes back to being this housewife and she raises a lot of his female relatives, uses all her money to find them matches for husbands and everything like that. And what's really interesting is that their marriage really seems to be based in love. So she can't have children. Yeah, I know.
What a shock.
Yeah. So she can't have children. They don't have any children. Aww. So she offers to divorce her husband. Yeah. She offers to divorce her husband and even find her husband a new suitable match. But her husband gets angry at this. He's like, no, our love is worth, and our life together is worth more than an heir. Which again is interesting because it's in the time of the Augustan social laws and where marriage and children is really encouraged and there's punishments for which includes like taxation and things like that if you don't have children at that high status. So it's just really interesting how one woman and her husband have like defied quite a lot of classical Roman values.
She's a bad bitch.
I know.
Yeah,
Don't mess with her.
Also, would have sacked her off age again.
I know. It's like in the same vein, like my favourite classical woman is someone called Arria the Elder, who we know about from Pliny's letters.
Ew, I hate Pliny's letters.
Good letters.
Boring.
Rose will know I'm actually so scarred from Pliny's
Oh my
letters.
God, honestly, it ruins my life every single time. But what I really like about her is I feel like I identify with how dramatic she is. Honestly, so she's a little bit problematic, but we'll leave it with that. So she was married to someone called Caecina Paetus, and they were both part of the Stoic opposition in Rome. So part of a rebellion under Emperor Claudius. And so her husband was ordered to kill himself and was arrested. And then after all of that went on, she decided that she didn't want to live anymore. So her husband, her family, I know, her family basically.
had enough of this.
She was put on suicide watch effectively, like by her family, and then
Wow, the ancients doing better than
It gets-
university.
yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
shade. Where's the tea?
Might want to cut that, Jimmy.
Sorry. And she was like, if I can't do it the easy way, I'm going to do it the hard way. Stands up and runs into a wall and knocks herself out.
Oh my god.
I know, and then never related
I
to anyone more.
Like, yeah, relatable.
I know. And then her and her husband like decide to commit suicide together. So she gets a knife, stabs herself, takes it out, gives it to her husband, and says, "It doesn't hurt," and makes him stab himself. So overall,
Also a bad bitch.
Yeah.
my favourite thing.
Going off them relatable people, mine is definitely Medea, just savage bitch. Like, you can leave me. Okay, kids. Okay.
Oh, no,
I don't
no,
give a fuck, I don't.
it's that level of extra. It's not just like,
Yeah, it's
it's,
so
I'm
bad.
going to kill your new girlfriend, and her father's going to die because he's so
And
heartbroken.
Because that'd be too easy.
No, but I'm going to kill our kids. Yeah.
Kill your kids. Gonna cut your uncle in broth.
And then,
Yeah.
Love.
Well, she does so much for Jason, and then he
No,
just
don't get me started. Don't get me.
And
My
And he
dissertation
was
on
like,
this.
no, it was Aphrodite. She
Yeah.
did all of that. You were driven by love. You didn't actually do anything.
this was my entire argument.
Aphrodite
We clashed
is
it.
Aphrodite is problematic.
yeah. She
Oh
is.
yeah, well, it's because she represents this like very like binary representation of love and relationships and whatever. So
Smooth.
And it's never like that.
no, it's not at all, and it just basically
And
makes
she's
it
not a
bit.
girl's girl.
No.
No,
she's
she
not a
needs-
girl's
The
girl.
yeah.
whole sort of poisoning of Dido.
Yeah.
That's a great thing. If we're going Venus.
Oh yeah.
They just need to learn fries before guys.
Yeah,
That's all they need to
True.
learn.
so true.
I say men are trash.
Yeah.
When someone says that, I'm always like, here we go.
No, I
She's
feel like
going off.
the running theme of today.
Yeah, you listening, Jimmy?
Yeah.
No, I'm actually so excited for whatever Scarlett's about to say.
Yeah, so we've done like some real, we've done mythological one. I'm going back to real, sort of. I guess Sappho is probably real.
No, she probably.
Well, I mean,
Come on.
yeah, we'll say that she's definitely real.
We can't deny
She's-
it. There's so many old white
She's
men
not-
out there denying so much about her at the minute.
She's real to
Cannot
me.
deny it.
She's real to me.
Yeah, she's definitely real to me, and I think like not only did she write all like this amazing poetry about women, which can also be read, like have like a heterosexual reading, but I think that's bollocks. I think it's definitely about women.
She's definitely gay.
Yeah, but she did also write some poetry about men. Like she
Yeah.
did, some of it is about men, and so she has this like reputation of being a lesbian writer. I like to think that she's a bisexual writer.
I think she was. When I first learned about Sappho in school, my teacher was like, definitely bisexual. Like,
Yeah, like
bisexual. She's not gay. She's not.
I think her being labelled as like a lesbian writer is like part of the general, like the wider, like erasure of bisexual people just in general history. It's
Yeah,
like
definitely.
you fit into this binary of you like this, you don't like that. You can't have both of these things. So I don't know. I think like her as a woman who was writing, it's like, oh well, you can have that, and then they,
You can have one.
you can have one, and then kind of when people got around to the idea of, oh, maybe these poems about women aren't actually about men.
Oh my god. Pokemon being bisexual.
That was like the plot twist.
Yeah, but
Just plot twist.
she was writing about women and she meant women. Shock. But I think there are also these poems where she does actually write about men, and I think she is, like I've already said, like often just kind of her bisexual writing is kind of ignored. So she's my fave.
She's so
Defo. She's just like, I don't know. I love her.
I don't know if part of that is looking at it through knowing the word sapphic and looking at it through a modern language and sort of assuming we know the word sapphic to mean lesbian, so Sappho must have been
Yeah.
a lesbian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like from Lesbos.
Yeah,
Lesbian,
yeah.
like there's so
Literally.
many connotations that automatically make you jump to that.
Also, lest we forget that, like, realistically, from finding it.
Did you just
also-
say lesbi forget?
I wish
Sorry.
I did. I so wish I did. But like, we have all this so many years later. Who was, looking at the work, deciding what it was, who wrote it,
Men.
Yeah.
This is
I love
this
how
is
that was insane.
Like, to fight all men.
This is like, it's such a pet peeve of mine because obviously like we have all this work and there is this stereotype that Greek women, especially Greek women, were meant to be inside, not heard, and all this kind of stuff. I actually don't believe that that's true. Like this is a personal belief. Obviously, there's evidence that says, oh, like this like weird ideals of women, but often that's like in comedy and in plays. And I have a feeling, it's a theory, and I can't like substantiate it with any evidence, because I think if I researched it and I was wrong, I think it would like break my heart. But I have a feeling that all of these ideals of women are kind of based in the classical revival.
Definitely.
So like all of the people that were looking at this evidence were men. It was like the Renaissance when this classical revival happened, and then once again in the Victorian era. What were the ideals of women then? To be seen and not heard, barely seen. I think that those ideals that have been put on the past come from that.
It goes across everything, like even the marbles in the British museums and stuff like that. There was that big like non-disclosure thing that came out a few years ago that when they got the statues, they'd be scrubbing the paint off them because the idea of the Greek statues was that they were this white marble. There wasn't any colour or variance or something. And it's that idea of what people expect classics to be like and expect the ancient world to be like.
I think we can agree that they do look better without the paint.
Yeah.
Imagine the eyes.
It's
not
like
good.
Yeah.
But I think what you were saying, Scarlett, about women not necessarily meant to being inside, I think that does actually translate a little bit, because there's the case of Hortensia and the supplementary laws and the taxation laws. So it was these laws that were basically taxing women on their dowries and patronage. And Hortensia and this massive group of powerful women and rich women in Rome.
The fact that they existed.
Yeah, they were rich bitches. And they went on
Ariana Grande was in the...
She'd be one of them.
Olive oil?
Yeah.
I want it. I've got it.
Oh my god.
You like my vase? Do you think? Just got it.
But they went on a massive public protest.
I can't get it.
Scarlett's just emailed this.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, Rose.
End of podcast, we've peaked.
We're done. So they went on this massive public protest, and Hortensia made this massive speech, arguing that the fact that women weren't allowed to partake in politics, they weren't allowed to fight in the military, but they had helped in the times of the Punic Wars by donating the gold, the jewellery, things like that. And that argument actually won. It meant like they reduced the taxation, like the amount of women that they were going to tax, and then put more taxation on men. So it's proof that women speaking out and being public in their political beliefs worked. And there's quite a strong correlation in Roman times in particular, I don't really know about Greece, that in times of war and civil strife, women came to the forefront because there weren't any men there. So they definitely had to have some role in the workings of the city, and then especially within like religious practices, which is like, it's obvious that they're there because there's so much evidence. But in the sense of political presence, they were heard at some point.
Yeah, and even relating it to modern days, like think about World War II.
Yeah.
Like think about what happened with women then. Like all the men were away fighting, women come to this forefront. It's like, well, still here.
Yeah.
Women out here holding the country down.
Yeah.
I think 1,000% as well, going back to what you were saying, that like we'll never know what it actually was like. We'll never know. We've only got what has been kept for us, given to us, and it's never gonna, if you don't want, like, you meant, like, in the time they never wanted women to like be seen like in a powerful way, like don't give them too much, don't give them any ideas, like they might, start rebelling.
Be better than
you.
you.
Might be better, which is like what has happened for hundreds of years, thousands of years.
Yeah.
But potentially we don't know, maybe back then it was like that and they just found it and were like, oh no, we can't let the women see this.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff that like we just don't get taught about. I think it's just like inherently like the classics and the classical subjects, like the way that they're taught is inherently patriarchal. It's like, okay, if you're going to teach kids Greek and you have 3 years to teach them Greek and there's one female Greek author, like writer, are you not maybe gonna teach them some of that? I think, like, well, we've done Greek. Ellen,
Yeah.
did you do Greek for a while?
No, I do Greek.
Oh, you do still do Greek? Like, I've never done any
Never.
Sappho ever.
No.
And it's not like it'd take, like, we've only got fragments, it's not like it'd take a long time.
No, it's like, okay, so we do like Catullus' like 2-line fragment poetry.
Yeah. Like, at the minute, we're translating a dialect which we don't even learn. Like,
No.
you think maybe we should get a
And
bit
do you
more
know-
inclusion?
yeah, there's really interesting. So I did, this was back at sixth form. One of the things that I learnt about for the exam was women in ancient Rome and ancient Greece.
Uh-huh.
Not one of those sources was written by a woman. It was
No.
about women, written by
And you
men
think about
for
who
a
you
male
do
audience.
learn about as well. Like,
Yeah.
it's always the same sort of
Mansplaining.
set.
Always.
I think we actually also have to think about the translation and who's done those translations. That's part of the problem of doing
Definitely.
classical studies and
Yeah.
I think it's sort of like
when those translations were done and who did them and for what audience and what's been left out.
I feel like classics, when it's being taught, it's sort of like, even when I sit in lectures now and we'll be looking at literature or something and it'll be like, oh, they did this to a woman, and like, it's just so glazed over because it's just accepted that women were like so beneath men. And like literally, sorry,
It's fine.
start turning hair.
There may or may not have been a bit of a beer speech.
Okay, and just for reference, none of it went on the mixing board. Literally none of it.
Sorry, Louis.
Skill.
Sorry, yeah. But
Just
like, it's
my
just
leg.
sort of a given that women are just below men. Like, it is just a sexist topic, and it's a sexist thing to study about. Like, all the stories that you hear, like, you know, we did our food module, and like even the European drama one now, and I know they're all like stories and myths and plays or whatever, but it's like when they talk about women being like raped and attacked, it's sort of just, it's not even.
I was
Well,
in a
it's-
lecture in first year, and they were talking about the rape of the Sabine
Sabine
women.
women, yeah.
And literally,
And
the,
it's
the,
graphic,
the,
yes.
but the lecturer was like, let's be clear. The verb is seize, not rape.
Yeah.
And do stuff like that, and I was literally sat there like, okay, bit of problematic
Yeah.
activity
I
there.
appreciate now that they put trigger warnings before lectures like that.
Yes.
I actually rate that.
Definitely. Like, I'm doing the sex, bodies and identities module. And yeah, we get trigger warnings before every lecture. We even had a trigger warning that was just like an image of somebody like giving birth, just because it was incredibly, well, it wasn't like that crazy, but like to some people it could have been considered like incredibly graphic.
The Greek art module, the symposium artwork, we got trigger warnings before that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all
That was
the-
so bad.
Yeah.
But I think what would be an interesting question is that can we apply feminist ideals and sort of thoughts to the ancient world, because it wasn't like, it's not in a sense of reflecting back on it, but actually of the women at the time, because it wasn't a political ideal,
That wasn't the world they
it wasn't the
lived in.
world that they lived in. So I think it's really interesting that if us as women in the modern day, what we see as our rights and what we think should have been like, how the women of the time, how it would affect them.
I don't think we could I don't think we could put our things online saying like, oh, that's disgusting the way they were treated. Like, for them it was just probably like yeah, life. Whereas, but I feel like it's really good learning about this kind of thing, because now we can learn
Yeah.
and move on and be like, you would never stand for that now. And like, if anyone ever tried to go near, well, obviously you wouldn't go near the extent of the ancients, but it just sort of like, it's more empowering. Like, I love seeing when women are being outrageous in Antiquity, like when we do plays and stuff, and I'm like, yeah.
Especially
Yeah,
Antigone.
go on. Oh, I love-
Antigone.
I love a young girl being like, fuck you.
Like, I don't have to apply, like, I don't have to follow your laws. You're being a stupid ass. I'm going to go and do my own thing anyway and just deal with the consequences.
Yeah. Before I spilt my drink everywhere, I was just gonna say, when we were talking about like the translations of works, it's like when you talk about Sappho, so much of her work is translated by men. There's a really great translation by Anne Carson. It's like this really great collection. It's called "If Not Winter," fragments of Sappho. And it's amazing. The way it's put together is just gorgeous. And the translations, I've got a couple different translations of Sappho, and they're definitely my favourite. I think the way that like women, even if it's like women from such a long time ago, can understand like what they're saying. Do you know what I mean? Like, even better than just like a man translating her work. It doesn't kind of get like the emotion or kind of the angle that they're coming from. Anyway, sorry.
I mean, regardless of what she's translating, Anne Carson is just brilliant.
Oh,
collectively.
yeah.
It's like the length of, possible meanings of words, that how could you ever, really try and capture what she was trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the way you translate it, how could you ever get close to it?
Yeah, exactly. Big up on Carson.
Sorry, I was just checking my questions. Do you think there's a lot that we owe to women in classics? That we just don't know about. More sort of like, do you think we've, as people, grown from seeing women in in Antiquity when we study it?
I think so. I think it definitely. I don't know. I think when you're reading,
Or even female classicists.
yeah, I think when you're reading all of the myths and all of the plays, there's a sense of really strong female figures, and it doesn't matter if they're real or if they're not real. They've in each of the plays, no matter with Medea, actions that aren't great, but she has her values. She has a strong passion. But she has she has a strong passion, and she knows what she wants, and she goes for it. The same with Antigone, and you get that seems to be a repeating theme in a lot of classical literature. So even though it was written by men, performed by men, probably to a male audience, there's still strong female role models that you might not want to follow all of their actions, but kill my kids, it'll be fine. But I think it's the political.
And her brother, don't forget the brother.
Yeah. I think it's. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now, but I think it's just. There's a sense of a strong female character in a lot of ancient literature, even though it is.
That is terrifying for men.
Yeah, and that's terrifying for men. Yeah, and that's the point. Because the whole point of Medea is that it's performed to an Athenian audience that's made up of male citizens, and this woman at the end has gotten away with killing her children, killing the king and his daughter, and then flying off on a chariot pulled by snakes to Athens. Golden chariot to Athens, which is like their main fear, a strong, powerful woman flying into their city.
Love it when playwrights or anyone use strong, powerful women to terrify the men.
Yeah.
So I'm you've done it on purpose. That is what you
it's this is a real fear.
Yeah, but genuinely they weren't terrified of them, and I'm like.
Is it funny or terrifying?
Yeah.
There's no in between.
But they use it. Yeah. It's not just some women are like that. They're like, oh my god, that is extreme. That is so extreme. Can't be having that. That is wild.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what do we think about women in literature like Homer? Penelope.
Poor old Dido is all I'm going to say. Poor old
Collateral
Dido.
damage.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Bless her. It's so sad.
She gets such a bum deal.
Yeah, she really does.
She had a hard time, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Definitely not jealous of it.
It is interesting though, because since Rome needed to show Carthage as being a strong city, a worthy enemy, that they did decide for that ruler of said strong city to be a woman.
To be a woman.
Yeah.
But it seems to fit with all of the other literature of that. It's so Dido ultimately in that story is the thing that's stopping Aeneas from going on to found Rome. So she is in a problem, and in quotations, a villain. So it is, but it's interesting again that it's either a strong, powerful enemy of Rome is a woman, or the prevention of Aeneas moving on to found Rome again is a woman.
I feel like in a lot of epic poetry, the women aren't made to be severe problems. It's just one of them sort of Calypso and Circe and.
I mean, it does come to a point in the Aeneid where the gods do need to intervene. It's not something he can
It's
overcome
their fault.
without them coming down to persuade him to leave. So if it was just.
Also, is that Aeneas just being a little bit of a bitch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What irks me no end about the Dido situation is the fact that
I see you feel very strongly about this, Connie.
I do, honestly. It's the fact that she's before Aeneas arrives, she's I can't even remember the Latin. Bossing my degree. She's una vera or something.
Univera.
Yeah.
Univera.
She's a one-man woman,
and
she is so praised and valued by the people of Carthage because of this. And it's
Yeah.
And then Aeneas turns up and she has betrayed her husband or whatever, even though he's dead. And she's no longer this one-man woman, and suddenly that means that she's not respected. And that drives me insane.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is that's so Penelope, she is what an Univera would be. She's a one-man woman, and whilst Aeneas is away, she's
Penelope.
yeah.
Sorry, right. What is the answer? What is it?
Yeah.
Is this a podcast or a revision session?
She is outwitting a whole host of men. She is an intelligent character. She's doing the weaving. Yeah. And doing that weaving again.
And also crying a lot.
Yeah, she does cry.
So I cry.
Yeah. But it's really interesting because she's portrayed ultimately as she's not a problem in this.
No.
She's really intelligent. She's staying faithful to her husband, even though Odysseus is off gallivanting and having
lots of sex.
Yeah.
But she has this genius idea on her own.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it literally just shows like how intelligent
And also
she
the
is.
men don't catch on.
No.
Like,
Yeah.
she's weaving this piece of fabric to cover a coffin,
Also
which is not very
the
big.
nurse as well. She's
Yeah, but it's because the men, because they had nothing to do with the weaving, have no idea how difficult or lengthy or whatever this process would be.
That's the nature of this.
Can anyone weave?
Can you weave? Can anyone weave?
I can knit.
I can knit.
I can occasionally do a crochet if it's not
On a good day. On a good day, I can do a crochet.
Is this like our modern equivalent of weaving?
Maybe, yeah.
We all knit.
My grandma taught me how to knit, but I don't
Yeah,
know
same,
but I don't
same.
know how to cast on. That's the issue.
Oh, I can cast on.
Every single
So
time,
easy, so
YouTube
easy.
videos, every single time, I'm
Yeah.
like, casting on, it's all unravelled, what's wrong?
Okay, guys, let's go back to the classics.
Oh, sorry, love a good bit of knitting.
Yeah, what do you think?
We are the ideal women. We
Yeah.
I don't think I am. I've been told several times. Right. Oh. Ouch.
It's just interesting with Penelope whether her intelligence is applied to her just being the ideal woman. She knows her weaving well, and that's why she's intelligent, or whether the intelligence
You know
is
you're
separate,
weaving well.
and that's why she could think of the trick.
It's just again the men not entering the female sphere. Like they, like Scarlett said, they don't they don't understand. Like they don't understand that a piece of fabric does not
Because
take
they
7 years to make.
Because they never go into her bedchamber, so I
Yeah.
just look at it, right?
Yeah, so how
Because
are they
isn't that
ever
a thing
there?
where like
She
men
just
would
like-
Who
go
is it that
out?
rats her out as well?
Oh, the females like.
Yeah, she always
that's-
descends from the
yeah.
bedchamber with the women,
Yeah.
not alone.
All veiled and mysterious. Can we never say this?
Yeah.
Not a girl's girl, not vibing. Classic. Anyway, right, moving swiftly on. Do you think classics as a subject is becoming more accepting of women?
Ooh.
As in, right, so our girls, Mary Beard, Edith Hall.
Yeah.
Angels.
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 I love you, Edith
Yeah.
Hall.
We love
I
you both.
love Mary Beard. I feel like when I saw her when I was in school and I was literally like, that is what I want to do when I'm older.
Honestly.
Not too much now, but
Also,
She has
her
so much
TV.
abuse, though.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I mean. And she just goes, I remember when I was in school and she did something and she got branded too ugly for TV or something.
Yes.
Oh,
like
in
that. And I was
America.
literally like,
Something to do with America.
my
Yeah.
God.
I was livid about that.
I was literally like, what?
Like she's here because she's intelligent
She's-
and
yeah.
she's literally
She's
like
teaching
a
you
genius
something.
on this subject.
Would an ugly old man ever be told he was ugly?
No, that's what I
Does
mean.
not-
He'd be praised for his like clearness and his experience and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like,
But what I find really interesting is that if someone said to me, like now modern day scholars on ancient times go, my two choices would be Mary Beard and Edith Hall.
Definitely.
So
they get like
Whose
don't
work
talk
I
shit.
enjoy the most.
They're like get to the point, tell you it's funny, it's interesting, it's relatable, it's like when Edith Hall came, I was like, this is
I love
relatable.
her.
Yeah,
You're
She's
relating.
amazing.
yeah, and literally like all the work that she's doing. So a lot of, for those of you that don't know, Edith Hall is working a lot for bringing classics to the mainstream.
Yeah.
So bringing it into public schools, bringing it into like introducing it, saying that it's not an elitist subject. It's brought across it. Like it is studied by those of all classes, of all genders, and I think that's a really, really important thing to do. Because I mean, I probably wouldn't have studied classics or ancient history. I mean, like ultimately, if it wasn't for mum and dad, because they have a real interest in it, and that's brought me into it. But I remember the first like mainstream classics thing that I really saw or watched was Mary Beard's TV program on
Yeah, that's
Rome.
what I watched.
And like
a trainer collection.
the
Can
train
I just
collector.
say?
Yeah.
Iconic.
Iconic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is really important to have women in the forefront of classics because ultimately coming to university, I was like, oh, I do ancient history, not classics, so there's probably going to be a large male to female ratio, and I'd say there is, because it's
In ancient history.
yeah, in ancient history, it's seen as more of like, in
A
quotation
masculine,
mark, a masculine subject.
I always thought there was, in I do classical studies, I always thought there was more girls than boys. In a lot of my modules, there's like a few boys, like the boys we know, but like then that's it. Like I don't know any.
The trend is usually classics is for boys, classical studies is for girls, and ancient history is for boys again.
Yeah.
But our year is very different, I think.
Like,
I think
we've
it's a big
literally been
change.
celebrated almost, because our year for classics at the minute, in our Greek class, there is 5 girls. Obviously, sorry Matt, you're on your year abroad, but, or whatever.
Teaching.
Abroad.
Teaching.
He's teaching.
Durham is very far away.
His year abroad from the university.
Yeah. So it's 5 women, and it was only brought to our attention sort of before Christmas,
Yeah.
when we got like a very kind gift from a publishing company, how rare that was. Like,
A gift from a publishing company because there was girls.
because there was
Connie
girls.
has brought her present with her, in fact.
It's my lovely tote bag
Yes.
about the book Not All Dead White Men. It's about classics and misogyny in the digital age is the tagline, because I see it every day on my bag. I've not actually read the book yet, it's on my to-do list, but I feel like it's just one of... I wear it proudly.
Yeah, I do too. I carry it around uni and I'm like,
I have to send you that to make a point.
But it was just
also very telling.
because it's so rare. Like, you just think classics and the language learning.
Yeah.
Think of all the private schools. Think of, your
Private
typical,
boys'
Yeah.
school,
spout, like,
Yeah.
I mean, to
Girls
quote...
would never have learned about classics or Greek or Latin when they were younger.
Yeah.
Because it just wouldn't have
I mean, was
been
it
taught.
David Cameron or Boris or one of them? Like,
Boris
he was
Johnson.
like,
Boris Johnson.
yeah, like spouting Latin from every orifice. I feel like that was the quote that he said. But like, it's true. That's what you think
Boris
of.
Johnson is a walking, like, advert for this kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like
you say you do classics,
classics,
and people don't know what you mean, because if you think
Say,
classics, you think
classical literature.
or classical music. I guess
I get
that's
classical
what
music.
Yeah.
Like,
What
to do
instrument you play?
Yeah, and I'm like, what? Oh, people are like, oh, is that like the Greeks and shit? And I'm like, yeah.
It's like you get to
just that.
that point because they look at you and they think Boris Johnson. They think that's what that person looks like, and it's not.
But I think what's really interesting is you hear all of this stuff in the media about women in science, women in engineering, but there's like almost nothing for women in the arts, because it's automatically assumed that humanities subjects,
do the
arts
arts.
subjects, women just do them.
Yeah.
So it's not encouraged as much as it is as women in engineering and women in science, but really it still needs that attention.
Definitely.
I think and I think Edith Hall and Mary Beard are doing a lot for that. Even if they don't know, like, even if they're not doing it on purpose, even if they don't know it, like, there'll be young
I like
girls.
the idea that Edith Hall is like, she is making a point of doing it.
Yeah.
She's in your face. She's like, this
Yeah.
is what I'm
But I
doing.
think-
And it's not going away. Like,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
like,
something
I'm
we
not
need to
gonna
carry
stop
on working
until
on.
you sit up and listen.
But I think even Mary Beard knows that she's doing it. She didn't publish Women in Power for no reason.
No.
Exactly.
I love that manifesto.
That manifesto is quite possibly
I'm
one of
using it in my
proudest
dissertation,
possessions. It's
yeah.
probably one of my proudest possessions.
Cheers.
It's so good.
It changed the way I looked at classics. That work really did.
Definitely. It's interesting when you're talking about her shoes, because it's like her shoes were made like such a big deal of by like social media and by the news and whatever. And it's like, okay, you see, it happens all the time where women are reduced to like their clothing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even
Men
the
are
men-
looking,
yeah.
you know.
Women
So
on the
now-
red carpet, like, what
Yes.
dress wearing, and you're a bit like, oh, I've actually come here to win an award for my achievements.
Yeah.
I'm just wearing a dress.
And I know
Yeah.
this is like this. The whole thing about Theresa May when
Yeah,
with
no matter
her
how you feel
trousers-
about her.
Yeah, no matter how you feel about her,
Yeah.
those trousers were not paid for by the British public. That was
No.
from her wages that she's worked
Yeah.
hard to
Yeah.
get.
And her, like,
Let her buy whatever she wants to wear.
I mean,
like,
yeah.
Also, like, is her clothing affecting how she's running the country? No, equally another time.
yeah,
But like, her suit's not affecting the
exactly.
situation.
It's like, obviously, being from near Liverpool,
You
not
could say Liverpool. I
yeah,
would
well,
take the piss.
yeah, Wolves.
I'm a Wool as well.
Definitely not the biggest fan of Thatcher, but
Connie, I feel like we shouldn't be getting into this.
I'm
You and I
saying,
are
like, she literally had to lower her voice to sound more masculine,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you just think, why can't we be taken seriously as women in no matter what field? Why, because we're women, are we hysterical?
Oh my! A really good example of this is
I
in
love the fact that people thought like women had like hysteria and it was like an
The
illness.
womb
Like,
movement.
yeah.
Oh dear.
I have hysteria.
Well, a really good ancient
Can I
example.
put that on a pec for?
Yeah.
Sorry, my womb's moving
I
around.
really could for our subject.
Honestly.
I have hysteria.
Hello.
But there's a really good ancient example. So when you look at the Oppian Law, it's Cato versus, I can't remember who it is, but the way that they present women, it's either hysterical or it, like depending on the way that they want. I think it was Cato that it's like, oh, women are hysterical because it's all about they just want the jewels and they want to be extravagant, and it's like, no, these women have to go through a lot. Like if they want to wear nice clothes, just let them wear some nice clothes. Like you don't like I was reading a book for my dissertation, and it was that basically saying how that women are either portrayed as like hysterical or the good housewife, like
or vain,
or
like they're
vain,
having this like
yeah.
vanity. Yeah.
And it's just really interesting. And then another part of that book, because it was literally saying like women in the classical world, they're not defined by who they are, they're defined by their actions and how they affect their children, their husband or their father, or like their brother. So like you look at Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi, and she is known as the mother of the Gracchi. She is known as the mother of the two sons that brought up a rebellion and were both violently killed. But she's known for being the mother, for raising those children. So she was a very intelligent woman. She had a very high education. She ran the household. She did everything. And she raised two very intelligent sons. And her definition changed from being the daughter of, I can't remember, this is back, she's in my dissertation, daughter of so-and-so, to the mother of the Gracchi.
Yeah.
And she's not defined in her own sense for her own intelligence.
She hasn't got a name there.
She hasn't got her name. She's defined by her son's intelligence and her son's actions, which I think is a really interesting.
I think that was possibly at the time seen as complimentary as
Yeah,
well. that-
exactly.
She's
Oh, she would have
responsible
loved
for
it.
things.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
like she's being talked about.
Yeah, and she probably,
Very
so even after her son's death, she's like renowned for being this really calm woman, and so she still throws these incredible dinner parties and she surrounds herself with philosophers, with really intelligent men, but again it's men, and she's not known, that's a part of who she is. She's her intelligence and her reaction to her son's death is a part of who she is, but she's defined by her sons. Which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it's like even within the language itself, like the way it changes. Women, this is ancient Greece, women didn't become wives until after they'd given birth. They were still referred to as the word for a bride until after they'd given birth. They weren't a wife until afterwards. It's like that even the language that they use represents this idea that it depends on the way that a woman is relating themselves to a man, the way that those relationships change. That affects like who they are, basically.
I'm going to see how long it took to know. Sorry, if everyone doesn't know, I stole Scar's lip as no she was talking very seriously.
Yes. As women, we're
obviously.
makeup as
Yeah,
women.
I'm obsessed.
Just women.
I have really been mad today. I was just gonna say, still classic. Like a woman's job is to like provide, like she's gonna provide children. Not
Well, they didn't even
future.
believe that they had to provide children.
Yeah.
They literally believed that a woman was an oven. I know, it's good. Like that a woman was like an oven for like the male sperm to form a baby.
Yeah.
There was this.
Oh, it was like the women didn't even make the
yeah,
baby.
there was this belief that it was just
An
they were
easy bake oven.
literally, and that was it. But it's interesting because
It's like the men had the ready-made packet
I'm
mix.
gonna
Like,
call my uterus an easy bake oven from now on.
yeah, exactly. It's like, but it's interesting because it's like they have all these common beliefs. But Aristotle didn't believe that. He was like, yeah, well, there's probably something that women do somewhere, because why would you have to have a woman? It's like, well, okay, you may have some dodgy ideas, but that's probably, you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, but somebody who's, even though people call him a philosopher, he can also be considered like a scientist, I'm doing air quotes, scientist, that he has these ideas of the fact that like women maybe do have some kind of... I know, like
Plot twist.
Well,
What a shock.
Like, can't you do sound effects or something? an audience gasp.
Jimmy, edit in sound effects, please.
Yeah. Right now, a big gasp like.
I'm not going to use timestamps to figure out where.
But I think on the sense of like children and being defined by your children.
Mm-hmm.
So in Roman law, a woman literally, she has no legal right over her child. So
Yes.
you could be divorced, your husband could be dead, you could be and you could have children, and they could live with you, and you could have some, like if you're in a good marriage, you could have some say over their education. But literally, that child has nothing to do, like that is not.
Yeah,
it's almost like that's not your child.
Once you popped it out, not yours anymore.
Exactly, yeah. So if the husband dies, the child has to be assigned a guardian, and that tutor and guardian.
Well,
is
as with the woman.
Yeah.
As with the
As
woman,
the woman,
because she
yeah.
can't live on her own.
How dare she?
It's back to the father or the brother,
Yeah.
and it's the idea that you've given birth to this child. It's a very dangerous process, in like it even is now, but like even more so then when they didn't have proper medicine.
Yeah, it was
A lot of people
life expectancy for a woman was around 30.
Yeah.
I think 30, 35.
And you didn't have a legal right over that child, and I think that's really interesting.
They died from hysteria.
Yeah.
All that woo moving.
All the jewels dragging them down to the floor.
All the fine clothes.
Stared at themselves in these
Bitches.
mirrors for too long. Going crazy.
Oh, it's so big. Can you imagine, like... No, actually, can you imagine?
We're all nearly dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
2/3 of the way there, let's go.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
the way uni's going at the
I was
minute.
gonna say, can you imagine if, like, you were controlled in that, like, any of us, there would be...
Oh,
if any male tried to, like, control Scarlet, would kill him.
Yeah.
oh, I'd kill
Scarlet would lead like the pitchfork.
Yeah.
How the torches.
I'd even, potentially have to hold Scarlet back. Cause I'd be like,
Maybe I'd go too far.
It would be like the scene in Beauty and the Beast when they're all converging on the palace to kill the beast, and like you'd be gassed on at the front with a pitchfach.
Oh
and
yeah,
torch.
I'd be the phone.
I kind of love this image.
Oh, I feel so
I feel like
funny.
we need to Photoshop Scarlett's hair with the rest on now.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
the
The
face.
one of her in the drag though.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Be so good.
Right, hang on.
I think we've got time for just one more question, sadly.
Where would we like to see the future of classics going as women who study classics?
I would like our female lecturers to get as paid as much as our male lecturers.
Oh my god, there's a mic.
Yeah. Apologies for that surge in noise, but that
But
is
it is
true.
true.
It is
It's
true.
true.
Even at this university, there is a big wage gap. I think it's like
From September, women just don't get paid till the end of the year. Is it September? I think it's October.
it's like I think it's like women work. It's like for the same job. It's like in general, it's like 2 months of the year. I think that they're not paid.
Crazy.
It's so crazy. It's ridiculous. I think, and I'm happy to stand corrected by anybody who listens. So nobody. No, I think it's about 20%.
Don't worry, Mum won't be listening to
Yes,
this one.
because I can't remember who it was. I think it was Emma.
Someone
I was
quite
walking to uni with, and she was saying that the 20%
Wage gap, yeah.
yeah, wage gap, because she's in the sex, bodies and identities.
Yes, we were told this by,
Yeah, and you were told this in a lecture, and it's, yes, okay, maternity leave factors in for some of it, and being on part-time after
But
coming
not
back.
everyone goes on
But
maternity leave.
20% is far too high for it
Yeah.
to be just maternity leave and lecturers coming back part-time after
That's
having a
cut.
child.
Yeah.
And not everyone has.
That's just their
maternity
salary.
leave.
It doesn't take
Yeah.
into it doesn't. I don't think it does take into consideration the time off.
Really?
I think it's their actual like just written down salary for like how much they would be paid for
Shocking.
starting in that role.
Well, it's like when Edith Hall came to
Exactly,
the talk,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
she said that she had told a member of staff her salary, and someone who I think was even below
Was
her.
it?
It's
So-
below
And,
her.
and
Yeah.
he was paid something ridiculous, like £10,000 more. I mean, I don't quote me because I can't remember the exact number, but it was a ridiculous amount of difference.
Yeah.
It was a
And
lot
she
of
was a lot
money.
higher up.
And
Yeah.
she didn't get back paid. So
Yeah.
it turned out like so again open to correction. But this was after after talking to her. It turned out that their pay increased by a lot of money just out of the blue. but they didn't get back paid for all of these years that they've been working there and being paid less. And you think, some people say, oh, the gender pay gap doesn't exist, but that's just evidence that it does.
Yeah, no, absolutely does. And like, I think a lot of it stems from this fact that we don't talk about salaries in jobs, and a lot of it is basically to stop women who were entering the workplace talking about their salaries, and women also generally don't feel as comfortable negotiating for a salary.
Exactly.
Because they're generally less likely to be accepted for a position. So to be accepted in the first place for a professorship or whatever is amazing. It's kind of, you can feel very awkward.
It's like a gift. Like, we've given you this, so really you shouldn't be asking for anything else. Like, you know, we've been nice to you as a woman.
Yeah.
We have filled our demographic for, you know, diversity. We don't need to be paying you how much we are paying the men.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's terrifying.
It's so terrifying.
That in a country that is, you know, we've got the Queen is the monarch of the country, and a woman is in charge of the country in the government, and that women are still absolutely wild.
I think because the progression of women has been so much from what it was. Like, we've still got a very, very long way to go, but because women have had this sort of boost in equality, in inverted commas, you know, people are almost in denial now. Like, people are saying, okay, well, you've come this far, like, surely by now...
Is this not enough?
Yeah, sure, like, but surely by now, this is... You'd almost assume that in this day and age, we'd be equal, but we're not. And people are still so in denial of that.
Well, even like, I was chatting to someone the other day, and they got a grant for their masters, and on the form was, are you a woman going into computer or engineering sciences? And the fact that that has to be on the application for a grant, because
they're more likely to get it as a woman.
It's crazy. I mean, it's great that she got the grant in the end, but that shouldn't be a considering factor.
No, absolutely not. Well, we're going to have to wrap up very soon, but if everyone else wants to give their kind of, I don't know, one statement for how they'd want to see classics go in the future, if you have a quick go round. Kath, I don't know.
Kath, you start.
I thought about what I was just listening to.
I don't think anything will be ever as iconic as what Scarlett started.
I know, yeah.
I'm really sorry.
No, actually, outrageous. We should have just stopped it there.
That should have been
We
the
should
end of
have
the
just
episode.
stopped. I just think that I want to see more of, you know, women just being bad bitches. And like the boys and all actually just sitting there and taking it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
I'd like to see the same amount of dedication and detail that goes into literally everything we know about men going into what we know about women.
Definitely.
And that being reflected in how we're taught and how we progress.
I'd agree with Connie, because literally 3 years at university, and none of the modules I've ever done have, like, other than like the Greek literature modules, have really reflected women in any form or any way. And I think, like, there's all of this stuff about Roman women, and I don't know if it's, and like Greek women as well, and I don't know if it's just that there's not enough research in it to have a module, or Newcastle just doesn't have the lecturers here to provide that. But I think I'd like just to have a module on Roman women or Greek women. I think would be really interesting.
Definitely.
Yeah. Unreal. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
This
thanks
has
everyone.
been. I don't think any of us will be back, so Jimmy's probably going to ban us. Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah. So, bye everyone.
Bye.